Joining us virtually is Tom Vilsack, the Agriculture Secretary, to talk about the connection between good nutrition and health. He spoke to our Editor-in-Chief, Bob Cusack, a short while ago.
Secretary Vilsack, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be with you.
Well, the first question I want to ask you is that you served the entire 8 years in the Obama administration in the position you now hold. What did you learn for this second go-round?
I think the importance of moving quickly to build on the foundation that was laid during the Obama administration to expand on nutrition opportunities and nutrition security. I think I learned that we focused a great deal on food insecurity during the Obama administration. We also talked about nutrition, but we didn't link the two. And I think what we've done in the Biden administration is we acknowledge and recognize that you can be fed, but not necessarily well fed. And it's going to be important for us in terms of our nutrition assistance programs to not only advance the notion of food security, but also nutrition security. And we've outlined very clearly the components of nutrition security, meaningful benefits for people, the ability to access affordable, healthy foods for everyone, the ability to translate dietary science into language that people can understand and actually apply in day-to-day life, and also making sure that we do this with an equity lens to make sure that we're not leaving anybody behind as we try to deal with the various nutrition programs at USDA.
I used to cover healthcare, and some people may be tuning in and saying, well, wait a minute, what is the Department of Agriculture doing here? This is not FDA, this is not CMS, not NIH, but obviously nutrition is a huge part of healthcare and making sure that you're healthy of what you're eating. Can you talk about the importance of nutrition to healthcare?
Absolutely. In each one of our nutrition programs, let me start with SNAP, for example. We know that when we looked at the Thrifty Food Pen and revised that and allowed for higher benefits to families, we knew that that would help ensure that those families could continue to buy healthy foods by the end of the month. Pretty good statistics that indicate that when the SNAP benefits run out, that folks have to make decisions that may not be in their best long-term health interests in terms of the foods that they buy. So the extent to which you have a meaningful benefit with SNAP, the ability to access healthy foods with your SNAP card, obviously results in better outcomes, particularly for children. That's also true, obviously, of the WIC program, to the extent that we established a more focus on fruits and vegetables, a bonus program that provided families with the ability to buy a bit more fruits and vegetables. Obviously, our school meal program, where we're transitioning back to the rules as they were in place before COVID. We know from research that it is the healthiest meal that youngsters can receive oftentimes from the school. And obviously the importance of school breakfast in terms of early learning opportunities during the day. So you combine all of that, and what you see is essentially our nutrition programs are a critical component. I think we're going to get more precise over time. We're going to do more research in terms of understanding people's basic makeup and figuring out ways in which their diet can be tailored or precisely managed and engineered to their particular health circumstances and conditions. We're excited about the Cancer Moonshot and our role in that Cancer Moonshot in terms of preventing chronic diseases by focusing on precision nutrition and doing research in a virtual center that we established focused on trying to figure out how do you match the genetics of a particular individual, their ability perhaps, or the fact that they may be more prone to an injury, to a disease, and how do you then use nutrition and tailor that nutrition to minimize the consequences and impact of that disease and try to minimize the risk of contracting that disease. So there's a lot of opportunity here, a lot of research, and a lot, I think, that we already know of a direct link between food security, nutrition security, and the nutrition programs that we administer at USDA.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you mentioned COVID. Can you talk a little bit about what the administration learned on nutrition and healthcare during COVID, and what are the obstacles that remain? Obviously, there's still some supply chain issues in various industries.
I'd say a couple of key messages. One, we learned that access to universal free school meals was a fairly popular opportunity that was utilized during COVID. to the point now where states are making the decision themselves to avail and to provide resources to expand access. We saw increased participation in our school meal program. And as I said earlier, it's the healthiest meal that many children will consume in a day. So to the extent that you expand access to that program, that's pretty doggone important. I think we also learned that we needed to make our programs more conveniently available. So on our WIC program and also on our SNAP program, we've seen an expansion of online shopping opportunities so that people can better utilize the opportunity to use these nutrition programs to access the right kinds of foods. They may have transportation issues. They may have more difficulty getting, they may not have access to a full-scale grocery store to the extent that they can do shopping online and it could be delivered to their home. That's obviously a way in which we can continue to expand access to nutritious foods. More to do there, no question. There's certainly more to do in terms of healthy food financing initiative, which is designed to provide resources to try to address this issue of food deserts. I do think it's incumbent on the grocer association and industry to ask themselves as an industry, not as individual grocers or individual stores, but as an industry, what are we doing and why is it that we have areas of this country where there simply is not access to a full-scale grocery store? What are the barriers? What are the impediments? And what is government's role? What is the private sector's role in trying to eliminate the notion of food deserts? It seems to me that we ought to be able to figure this out. We currently at USDA provide some grant monies and resources, and that's fine, but it's sort of hit and miss. It's one community at a time. What I would hope we would be able to do, what the industry ought to be thinking about doing, is creating a real commitment to eliminating food deserts as an industry. It's in the grocery association's long-term best interest to have more grocery stores and to have access to grocery stores and to be able to ensure that families, regardless of their zip code, have access to fruits and vegetables and healthy choices. When they don't have those choices, then we all end up being impacted because healthcare costs go up. We obviously have a fairly significant issue with obesity in this country, especially among our young children. We know that there are serious results with obesity at a young age that carry into it a chronic disease in adulthood. That's increased healthcare costs for all of us. We also know the military continues to be deeply concerned about whether or not we have sufficient numbers of young people who are physically able and fit to do the work of defending our country. So it's a national security issue. It's a health issue. It's an equity issue. And I think we at USDA want to work in partnership with those who want to solve this issue of food deserts.
Looking at the food deserts and lack of access to healthy foods, is that more of a problem in rural areas and urban areas, or is it a combination of the two?
It's probably a combination of both. I think most people often think of the issue of food deserts in the context of urban centers, where there may be several miles between where you live and where there may be a full-scale grocery store. There may be a plethora of convenience stores, but the offerings in those convenience stores are very, very limited in terms of fruits and vegetables and healthy foods. And so people often think of it in those terms, but the reality is we have a lot of remote areas in the country today. We have a lot of small towns, maybe there are 500-600 people, where it may be difficult for a full-scale grocery store to be profitable, to be located, but certainly there should be an opportunity for a smaller scale store to be able to make it. And again, that's the industry can identify for us what the barriers are, and then we should figure out ways in which we can remove those barriers. But right now, there's a, the analysis is done on a community by community basis as opposed to sort of a holistic nationwide commitment. If we're going to eliminate hunger in this country, which is certainly a goal that many of us are committed to, we have to address this issue of access, and that requires the industry being very helpful to us in terms of identifying holistically, comprehensively, the challenges they face in locating grocery stores and the various models and sizes of grocery stores that could potentially be profitable with a little bit of help or if barriers are removed. So that's my hope that we are able to encourage the industry to provide us that information and direction.
Well, Mr. Secretary, now that the debt limit showdown is in our rearview mirror, now there's other things to tackle legislatively, and one of them is the Farm Bill, which, as you know, has got to be reauthorized every 5 years. This is usually a bipartisan initiative, but as you know, there are always obstacles on Capitol Hill. This is actually more of a food bill in many ways than a farm bill. Where are the negotiations, and are you confident that a bipartisan bill can be signed by the president later this year?
Well, I think that both the House and the Senate are working, the standing committees are working very hard to get to a point where they can reach consensus within their specific body about what the direction and the focus should be of a farm bill. You're absolutely right. It's misnamed. It's not just a food bill. It's not just a farm bill. It's a conservation bill. It's a rural development bill. It's a research bill. It's a forestry bill. It's an economic opportunity bill. It's a risk management bill. It's a very large bill that really impacts and affects all of rural America in particular. And so there are a lot of interests. Most often the differences are not Republican and Democrat. Most often there are differences in geography or in commodities. But this year, I think we're faced with a circumstance where we're getting a bit of mixed messages, if you will, from the House, and from a standpoint of some of the issues that are important. I think that Chairman Thompson has been very clear that he wants a bipartisan bill, and I support him in that, and he's working hard to get that. But he's got members in his caucus that have a different view about the Farm Bill, which creates some challenges. Certainly we had a very robust discussion and debate about SNAP during the debt ceiling negotiations and discussions. And from our perspective, that ended that conversation. That put that aside. Decisions were made, deals were made, and from my standpoint, as I like to say, the issue of SNAP is snapped shut.
Right.
But I think there are still some serious issues relative to how far and what we have to do to support our farmers during difficult times. And as you look at the Farm Bill, you always have to understand that you work within a constrained baseline budget, and you have to fit all those requirements and demands within that budget. And that becomes very difficult, especially if people want to add things, if they want to change or increase expenditures in one area. That means you have to basically sacrifice in other areas, or you have to figure out additional ways in which additional income or revenue, if you will, can come into the Farm Bill discussions. Those are always very difficult discussions and negotiations. I'm hopeful. I know there's a deep commitment on the part of the legislative leaders and congressional leaders to do this, but it won't be easy. And the reality is, we have seen from time to time, it takes a little bit longer than people anticipate, but eventually the job gets done, because nobody wants the alternative, which is if the Farm Bill doesn't get reauthorized, we go back to what is called parity. I think farmers probably would be just fine with that, because we would see gigantic increases in commodity costs. But I think consumers would be very, very concerned about it, because you would see very significant increases in food costs, which I don't think anybody wants.
From a big picture standpoint, what do you think the Farm Bill needs to do? You recently told Congress that as far as farmers and livable profits, it wasn't a lot of good news. So how can Congress help?
Well, I think we have a fundamental decision to make, which is, do we want a Farm Bill that benefits a few large-scale production commercial operations, or do we want a Farm Bill that benefits the many and the most? I mean, the reality is we had a record year in farm income in 2022, which is the good news. The bad news is that only 7.5% of farmers, those who sell more than $500,000 in product every year, those folks got 89% of that income. And that left 11% for the other 92.5% of farms, nearly 2 million farms to share. I think we have to look at ways in which we can expand entrepreneurial opportunities for those small and mid-sized farms, so that they don't necessarily have to get big or get out, but they can actually offer opportunities for themselves in the next generation by developing additional income streams that come into that farm. It could be a climate smart agricultural opportunity that creates the ability to participate in ecosystem service markets and get paid for the environmental result that's occurring on your farm. It could be conversion of agricultural waste into something more valuable so that you create new commodities from that waste, like sustainable aviation fuel. It could be expanding significant local and regional food opportunities where farmers can negotiate directly with a school or an institutional purchaser. It could be reducing their costs by embracing renewable energy through the Renewable Energy for America program, now funded and financed at historic levels because of the Inflation Reduction Act. That could also result in that REC basically utilizing what you don't need on the farm to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels and reduce utility costs for everybody in small towns across the country. Or it could be that we take advantage of the president's challenge to expand competition by building more processing capacity, and those processing facilities that are being built can now be cooperatively owned by farmers so that they benefit not only from production of poultry or protein, beef, pork, whatever, but they also benefit from the processing of it. So basically looking at ways in which we can support that entrepreneurial model so that essentially folks have a choice. If we don't do that, then the choice that Secretary Perdue suggested several years ago was you either have to get big or get out. And I don't think that's a choice that, frankly, anybody in rural America wants.
Well, Secretary Vilsack, you've got a lot of issues on your plate. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you.